welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a Ko-Fi, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by Neil, Brian, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Hello.
Hello, Nathan.
Good morning. Hey, good afternoon.
Oh, morning. What a chirpy bunch. How lovely. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Can't think of anything.
Are they accounting for it in aerospace?
Counting for axial rotation of the Earth-based variety in aerospace. If you've got evidence for axial rotation, I'll listen to it.
No, I'm asking, are they accounting for it in the world of aerospace?
Are they accounting for Earth rotation in aerospace? I sense a loaded question, so I'm hesitant to answer. Go away, going with this.
No, it's just no. The answer is just no. They're not. There's no loaded. It's just like, are they accounting for it in aerospace, where they would have to account for it? Above all other things in the world, there's nothing outside of, there's nothing more than aerospace that they'd have to account for the Earth rotating if it was. If the Earth was a rotating sphere, then that would have to be accounted for in aerospace. Is it accounted for? No. Why not? Because it's not a rotating sphere. That's simple.
You would need a radius for that anyway.
Yes.
And an axis, yes. And a flat plane to describe it perpendicular too. Looking about rotational frames of reference, aren't we?
Yes.
So we're going to need a flat plane at some point.
Well, to start to actually mathematically calculate it, you're going to need a wheel.
Yeah, the 15-degree now, it's a flat Earth measurement.
Yeah, the degree change of the stars that we observe that is apparent, as opposed to the outrageous claim that it's the ground itself that's turning to cause that effect. Nevertheless, there is a positive claim from the globe believers that there are two reference frames and this effect called Coriolis. So to summarise what it is that the globe claims, they suggest that Earth turns underneath as a non-inertial turning reference frame. It turns underneath an inertial reference frame to exhibit effects such as sniper's gunfire drifting after it leaves the barrel of the gun. That is to say, the sniper is claimed to fire the gun, and after the projectile leaves the bullet and therefore leaves the non-inertial turning reference frame claimed to be Earth, from the vantage point of the sniper himself, the bullet will appear to deflect. Now that deflection isn't actual, the bullet's travelling straight, however it is asserted that Earth turns underneath the bullet at a rate of 15 degrees an hour, the same causal link that they ascribe to the stars. Ergo, they assert Earth turns underneath stars and bullet, or footballs, depends if you want to use Neil deGrasse Tyson's example, whichever you like. The claim is Earth turns underneath as a non-inertial turning reference frame. We respond, if Earth turns underneath as a non-inertial turning reference frame, then if you remove yourself like the bullet or the football from that frame of reference, Earth would turn underneath you, massively reducing flight times when travelling west, because Earth would turn underneath you. And this does not occur. For example, a flight from Charlotte, North Carolina to Los Angeles would only take an hour and a half because Earth would be turning underneath that flight, something that does not occur. Response from globe believers. We wouldn't notice any effects of Coriolis. There's only one reference frame. So no proof we spin, no deviation, no Coriolis. We wouldn't expect to see anything, is their response. And we go from there, with stupid flat earthers then responding to that rebuttal, which is nonsensical. I laugh at idiots like Simon Dan who tell me my reference frames are ruined when they give us examples that don't have 15 degrees an hour drift in them. When the globe's claiming there's 15 degrees an hour of drift that we're supposed to be observing called Coriolis effect. Laugh at them, don't start arguing with the fact that they then foist upon you the idea that we must have second reference frames turning underneath, bullets, and flights, and footballs, and drones, and you if you jump up and down. No, we don't observe this effect. That's where their claim fails. That's the end of the argument. Not an excuse for them to tell you why we wouldn't notice the 15 degrees an hour drift they're claiming we should notice. That's an anti-flat earthers rebuttal that you can ignore and laugh at. A la Simon Dan. Quote, you and your reference frames have been ruined, end quote, Simon Dan tweeted at me in debate, something he currently lies about. Anyway, moving on. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No, I can't think of anything either.
Are you saying, Nathan, is there any evidence that gas would not diffuse into an area of zero resistance?
Is there evidence of stuff not diffusing? No, that's not what I'm asking, because that would be me asking for an example that violates the second law of thermodynamics. Now, I can point that out when a globe believer tells me that they believe the sky is a vacuum and the Earth has high-pressure gas. Then I'll point out that that belief is a second law of thermodynamics violation, because it has no containment around the high-pressure gas, and therefore it would disperse into the sky vacuum they believe in, debunking their notion and their belief that they have a sky vacuum above them. They don't.
Well, I know for definite that gas at pressure will most definitely diffuse into an available volume of zero resistance.
Yes, it's a law of nature.
Yes.
So, yeah, as per the second law of thermodynamics, all of you that believe we've been to the moon or been out into sky vacuums or we've got satellites in the sky vacuum, you refer to it colloquially as space. Outer space is fake. There is no sky vacuum to be in orbit in. Orbit also requires measurement of a flat plane to come up with that calculation to infer, through Keplerian motion, that we have a sphere to stand on and a sky vacuum for things to fall around us in, after measuring Earth flat with the angles to the stars. So Earth, by way of measurement, defies this notion in calculation that's been used to better understand motions, not describe the ground we're standing on. That reification has taken place over many years, if I get my words out. And now we're in a position where the majority of the Western world actually believe they're standing on a surface that's described in that model after measuring Earth flat to come to it. Absurd as that may seem, that also involves the idea of us rotating as a non-inertial turning reference frame with a sky vacuum above our head with orbital motion and the stars moving at a rate as a consequence of us turning beneath them. The effect that we were supposed to be observing but have a anti-flat earth apologetics for why we don't see it is a 15 degrees an hour deviation, which simply is not observed. Now, Brian has actually covered the second part of what he covered yesterday in the pre-show. So he's gone through some of it, but not the full presentation in terms of the actual rhetoric. Now, we've got a choice, so I'm going to give the audience the decision. I'm not going to post it as a survey. I'm just going to ask you, if you're in the live chat right now, to give me a number one. There's only 50 of you, as we've not long been going. Quarter of an hour. Please share the show, by the way. Smash that share button. But just let us know. You have got a presentation ready to go on this, haven't you, Brian? Before I start asking people if they want it, and then they say they do, and you can't actually do it.
Are you talking about how GPS, what I claim that GPS is actually doing?
Yes.
That presentation? Yeah.
Okay, so well, we've also got a video which I'd put my bias out straight away. I'd much rather cover what Brian's got to say, because the other alternative is to cover a video shared by Bible U or Paula, which is on Coriolis effect, my least of all favourite subjects that we cover. Though there is a shortish section of one video we can cover if you decide to cover that. So number one, if you want to cover Brian, and the second part of how GPS functions in reality, what it's actually doing. Or number two, if you want us to extend the housekeeping session about sky vacuums and Coriolis effects, that's non-inertial turning reference frames and inertial turning reference frames, 15 degrees an hour, the claim that we should have drift, footballs and bullets, and aeroplanes and drones and hot air balloons. So number two, if you want to cover that. Number one, if you want to cover Brian. We'll get an idea in a couple of minutes' time from the audience who wants us to cover what. I'm good either way from a point of view. If the audience do decide to go with the Coriolis video, we will cover that. And I'll just tell Brian, get lost, because the audience has spoken. But I'd actually personally prefer to cover
Everybody just vote one. That's it.
Don't give your bias. You can put your vote in too, Neil. Only I can put my bias across. Anyway, yeah, we'll get some reactions in a minute. In the meantime, we'll ask one more housekeeping question. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
What's that?
Gravity. What's that?
Well, it depends. I mean, if you're talking about specific gravity, yeah, I can prove that through a scientific method. But that's not connected to the other gravities that they claim.
Wait, but can we ask the Glober in the chat about the gravity?
Yeah, but hold on a second. But how can it depend? It cannot be multiple things, can it? It can only be one thing.
No, it has got multiple definitions. I know by definition that is an equivocation if you're trying to use it in the same subject matter with both contexts or multiple contexts for the same word that you're using in one argument. But matter of fact, and that's true with many words, there's many different definitions and meanings for the word gravity. And as much as I'm going to appeal to Neil not to get triggered when I explain this, one of those is specific gravity. Easily validatable through cause and effect reasoning, that's a hypothesis, constructed with a null, and then validated by experiment. It's been done by Anthony Riley. It's been done by many, many people. It just didn't have a formal hypothesis constructed alongside it until Anthony Riley did. But that's
so
specific
gravity is holding people to a ball?
No, I was just about to say that.
No, that's not gravity.
Well, no, that's what most people think of with gravity, is how they're able to live on a rotating sphere in a sky vacuum.
Yes.
Gravity.
Yeah, well, if
Thank
I was
you,
to,
John.
okay, well, by another different comparison, if I was to say quantum gravity, which isn't got sod all to do with quantum mechanics, but nevertheless, it's still a different type of gravity, quantum gravity. Yeah?
Right, but that would be dealing with how you live on a spinning ball in a vacuum. That would deal with that, right?
Okay, I think I see where you're going. What you're saying is, with the exception of specific gravity, all other gravities have a connection to the suspension of disbelief with regards to standing on a spinning water ball flying through a vacuum, right? The only one that doesn't have a connection is specific gravity.
Right. Yeah, it's the only one that's not asserting that it's what allows you to live on a globe.
Nathan,
And
so
you're
maybe the
falling for
Glober
it. Every
in the
time you
voice
say
chat.
specific gravity, you're
Oh my
falling
God,
for
Brian.
it. Sorry.
Mush is trying to appeal to a Glober who might have something to say on the matter. Go ahead, Mush.
There's a Glober in a VC, man, who's very active in main text chat. Maybe he wants to pipe up and tell us about the gravity. Matt Spiracy, would you like to say something? Would you like to add something about gravity? Or you just like to text? Guess he doesn't feel like talking. He's texting. All right.
Mathspiracy.
Then why is he in voice chat?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that question. You don't need to chat troll. You've got a mic. Mathspiracy.
He said he can't talk, but he can text.
Why are you in the voice chat? Why are we asking him? He's not going to respond on
Yeah.
mic. I get it. Why people
Sorry for
joined.
interrupting, guys.
I don't think it's. I don't think it's productive to even expect. Like if one of the bowlers wants to speak up, they will. Do that kind of way. I don't think it's productive to try and get them to speak up. They're not going to do it. They don't want to do it. They just want to be in the text chat, maybe troll a bit through text, or be in the live chat, troll a bit through text. You know, the voice chat. Sorry, and troll a bit through text and get that little bit of attention. A lot of these people are attention seekers. This is what and they've used the globe heliocentric rhetoric as their vessel to get that attention. And so giving them attention like that is giving them what they want. That's my opinion. That's what it is.
Go on, fresh grown flowers. Go on. Okie dokie then. Right, the audience has spoken. They definitely want Brian.
Okay, I'll share my screen then, and we'll get into it.
You share your screen?
I sure will. 1 second.
Share your screen. That's rumpus, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. So you should be able to see my screen now at this time, yes?
Yeah, we do. It looks good.
Okay. Please excuse me on my cough a bit. I'm sick today. Sick the past couple of days. So.
What did you just say? Excuse my gruff voice. I've just smoked 6 packs in the last couple of days. Is that what you just said?
No, I'm sick the last couple of days.
Oh, sick.
Sick. Yeah, I have my nose is blocked. I have a sore throat, all that kind of stuff. So I'm likely to cough up rubbish out of my lungs. So I'm just saying that if anyone doesn't understand something I said, just say it. Just like what you did there, Nathan. Just say it. Because I might have to clarify some things. Because there's already, not only do I have an accent that people find hard to understand, I also am sick on top of that. So I'm just going to close the door here out a bit because my neighbour's dog is barking. Okay, so this is how I maintain that GPS is actually working. Because even though I can make it work using elevation, let's say the horizontal coordinate system, using angles and azimuth, I can make it work that way over a flat plane, right? Easy. But I think it's actually a bit smarter than that, and they're using a bit more than that. Now, I could be wrong, right? They could be just using that, the other way I spoke about with the horizontal coordinate system. They could just be using that, and this might be something they never even thought of. I don't know, but this is how I maintain that they're actually doing it. Here in the center, we have the receiver, right? I'm just going to color that. I color that red. Is that okay? Can you see that? Once everyone can see it. Okay. And the receiver receives signals from, I have one signal source, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 signal sources, right? I maintain, because their official claim is that we have satellites, right, that orbit the globe. And we know that's a load of rubbish, right? But that's their claim. But I maintain that the receiver is receiving information from any source that is helpful to it, right? What I mean by that is, let's just say signal source 2 is an airplane. Now, airplanes have GPS receivers on their roof and on their bases, right? Now, the one on their base is for differential GPS, if I remember correctly, because what we would get with our phones is what's known as assisted GPS. An assisted GPS is like it's coming. They claim it's coming secondhand from cell towers and stuff like that. So on your phone, you have GPS, but it's coming from a cell tower. Basically, right? That's what they're claiming, right? But it comes from a satellite to a cell tower or whatever ground-based situation to your phone. Now, the same thing is going on with airplanes, where they're claiming airplanes get GPS information from the ground, right, to the airplane, right? But this information has come first from a satellite. So it all starts off with begging the question that we have satellites in orbit around the globe in a heliocentric sky vacuum, right? But we can ignore that because we know that's wrong and false. It can't be, right? We know we've debunked all that. So if signal source 2 here, I'll zoom in a bit, if that is an airplane, right, and here's the receiver, from a cold start, the receiver just turns on and needs to find its location. If this is an airplane and the receiver can receive information from the airplane, it can receive it can detect the azimuth, right, in relation to itself of the airplane, right, and it can get the coordinates that the airplane is directly above, which would be the airplane's coordinates, but their coordinates is going to be on the ground because they're flying a ground track, right? So the coordinates at this exact point, right, the receiver gets that at an exact time. So the receiver knows, let's just say it's 4:10 in the day, you've turned on your receiver, you don't know, the receiver doesn't know where it is, you're in Texas, and you turn on the receiver and it gets information from a flight that's after leaving Dallas an hour ago, and it gets information of where that plane is at 4:10 in the afternoon, and the exact coordinates of that plane at 4:10 in the afternoon. And because all GPS receivers have compasses within them. Now they use what's known as a microsensor or a MEMS compass. A microsensor where it uses the magnetic field, but it's not affected by things like a magnetic compass is, right? So it gets the azimuth of this, which would be, let's say we have north up here, right? Let's go out a little bit, move it up slightly, right? South down here, we have east over here and west over here. So the receiver knows that it's after getting a signal from a source, which is an airplane, right, at a particular time, and the coordinates, ground coordinates of that source, right, no matter what it is, but it's an airplane for this example, and it's after getting an azimuth around from north to that airplane. So it knows then that somewhere to its northeast, right, which would be probably about, 45 degrees, let's just say 47 degrees azimuth, right? It knows that there is a coordinate there and it's not getting a signal from there. So it doesn't know how far away it is from this signal source too. It doesn't know this, not yet. So what it does is it makes a ghost line directly the opposite direction. So if this is, let's say this is northeast, right, at 47 degrees or whatever, then it makes a ghost line, right, southwest, right, at a mirroring, let's say a mirroring line of that line there. So it then knows it's on this line somewhere, but it doesn't know where it is on this line. And it knows, because it's updating the coordinates, it knows that coordinates is an hour away from Dallas, but it doesn't know where it is on that line, so it doesn't even know if it's in Texas, right? Then it gets another signal, picks up another signal, let's say signal source 1, and that's from a ground station. And that ground station has the coordinates, right? And it picks it up at a particular time, and it finds out that that ground station is exactly north of the receiver. So now it has a signal from an airplane, an hour outside Dallas at 4:10, and it's northeast of the receiver, and it has a signal from a ground station directly north of it. So what it does is it creates a second ghost line that cuts straight through the first line. So now it has two intersecting lines. So, and what it does is then it knows, right, via where that intersects, it starts to know, based off the coordinates of here, which is directly below the airplane, and this ground station, it starts to figure out where it is because it knows the straight line distance between these two places, because it has mapping within it, or access to mapping, right? All of the surveying OS mapping across the world, that's all available to GPS. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Without mapping, it can't do anything. But the Globers actually, or opposition actually, deny that it has mapping. It's unbelievable how you could have a coordinates that's not on the surface of Earth, and how the receiver couldn't have a use of a map. It makes no sense. But that's what we're dealing with. But either way, it knows that signal source 1 and signal source 2 are a particular straight line distance apart, right? And based off of the angle to signal source 1 and between signal source 1 and signal source 2 and signal source 1, it then has an angle and it can create a triangle, right? So I'm just going to get a segment here. So it can then create a triangle here, right? So now it has a triangle to work with, right? And it can start working out where it is. It then has a second triangle because it can connect up the two ghost points, right? After that. So it has now two triangles that it can start working out where it is, right, in relation to these 2 points, right? It then gets a third signal, right? 1 second, sorry about that. It then gets a third signal, right? And this is the thing. I maintain, right, that it's very likely, right, that GPS is using the celestial navigation ephemeris. And it has that ephemeris and an update of that all the time within it. So I maintain that it also could be using that. So if it starts figuring out somewhat where it actually is, it can start using the celestial ephemeris. So let's say this is not a signal source, number 4 here. Let's say that's not a signal source. Let's say that's a GP point of a celestial body, right? That's somewhere over Texas, Louisiana area, right? It can then use that in a straight line fashion and make a ghost line the opposite way, right? And because it's starting to figure out where it is based off of these other places, it can now start using the likes of a GP point of a celestial body and determine that it's probably about this distance, right, in the opposite direction away from the receiver. It can then use another triangle by making an angle between this point here, which is the ghost point of the GP, to the ground station, and then make another one from here to there, making a right angle triangle, right, where it starts to have some idea of the distance between it and this point, which is along the line to the ground station, but it's not all the way through the ground station. But because it can then make a right angle triangle where it predicts the ghost point of the celestial navigation point is, it then has 1, 2, 3 triangles to work with. And can start bringing in other sources then. So let's say this is a ship, right, off the coast of Texas. Here, signal source 3. And it's getting this signal from its southeast, almost exactly southeast, or let's say 37 degrees, or sorry, it wouldn't be 37 degrees, but it has its azimuth over to here, and it's almost exactly southeast. It can then make a ghost line the opposite direction, and it knows that this ship here, its position in relation, what could be off of Galveston or somewhere like that in Texas, its position in relation to the signal source or the coordinates of and timing of the airplane makes that there's that direct straight line distance between the 2 points. It can then do the same with the ground station. So now it's using a load of triangles. It can also use circles, but using a load of triangles to determine exactly where it is based off of all these coordinates. And it's starting to place itself at the center of all this. So it starts to know, oh, okay, I'm in Texas. Where exactly am I in Texas? Right? And it has then this other one, or sorry, it can bring in a fifth one if it needs to, like a fifth signal source. And it knows that is, let's say, almost southwest. And it can make another triangle between this point. It won't need to make even a ghost line for that one. Just this point and this ghost point here. It has another triangle. So, and once it starts doing that, it can start making another one with this. So it starts making triangles around itself, placing itself in the center, determining exactly how far away it is from these points. And that's how it finds its location. And because I know that GPS receivers, use the horizontal coordinate system. They use angles to what's made to be satellites, but they use angles, right? And they have a mask angle, a point that's about 10 degrees or so. They don't deal with below. But just like with celestial navigation, they don't want to be dealing with anything below a certain angle because they're dealing with horizontal situations there where there's going to be a higher density of air. But once it doesn't matter if the airplane is 35,000 feet high. What matters is that it gets the coordinates that direction, that plane is flying over at that exact 4:10 in the afternoon on that exact date, and that's what it needs, because then it can use 2 dimensions to start figuring out exactly where it is, and that's, in my opinion, exactly how GPS works, because the receiver knows the angles to. It doesn't need the angles. I don't think it really needs the angles. What it actually only needs is the timing that the signal is detected, the timing, and the coordinates of that signal on the ground, and it just treats the Earth as a pure flat plane, and it uses azimuths, and then connects up via either circles or, like, because you can also connect up, if I just go circles, it can connect up. I did that wrong. Sorry. So it can make a circle from this signal source 3 to itself, and the same with this signal source 1 to itself, and the same from signal source 5 to itself. And just like in celestial navigation, it has intersecting circles. So it can use angles, triangles, and circles. And that's how it's doing it. And that's why if you look into GPS, it deals with 2-dimensional coordinates. The Z, the X and Y, is what it deals with, or latitude and longitude. The Z, which is the elevation, that comes afterwards. If it has the access to OS mapping, then it can tell you, once it has the X and Y, it can tell you what your Z is, your elevation. Or it can tell you what your elevation is once it has your latitude and longitude. Because it knows, because of surveying of that part of the world, it knows that that particular point that it's at in Texas is, let's just say, is 550 feet above mean sea level at Galveston or whatever. And that's how it does it. It's purely 2-dimensional, and it's not as complicated as they make it out to be. But this is, if it does this, then it'll be so easy to give the public the impression it's doing something completely different, involving orbital satellites and all the rest of it, when none of that is necessary. Even if we were on a globe, none of that would be necessary. You could literally treat the globe as a flat plane and do the same thing, and then convert it back if you wanted. But the point is that GPS in no way proves a globe. It uses a flat plane, and this is my prediction on how it actually works, using circles and triangles via azimuths. Any questions? That's kind of it, really.
Cool. Very cool.
One last thing.
There was a
I'm
question,
planning
but
it's using ground stations, ships, airplanes, high altitude balloons, and celestial navigation ephemeris. Go on, Nathan. Sorry.
well, I was going to ask. I was itching to while you were doing the presentation, but it would have ruined the flow of it. But where's the objection? So where are they saying? Oh, I don't mean elevation angles or any of that. I mean, at what point are they objecting as you go through this process? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you know what I'm asking?
Well, they don't have any specific objection, just that I'm totally wrong and I'm an idiot.
I've read
what I
the
mean?
comments. I still haven't watched the video. I've read the comments. Brian doesn't understand how GPS works. This demonstrates how Brian doesn't understand. I've read all that. But there must be some specific objections to some stage that your description... You said earlier that they don't like the fact that you're referencing subpoints. So is that the only specific objection that you've actually had given to you so far?
Well, yeah, if I take signal source 2, let's just say, it doesn't matter. They can claim whatever they want. If I take any of these 5 signal sources and I call them a satellite and I say I give them a subpoint directly below them, it's the same thing as what I'm doing here. I don't care what they want to claim about it, right? The point I'm making is that they don't want to. They are denying that the coordinates directly, even on their globe now, that the coordinates directly in a straight line below that satellite, that point on their globe, that coordinates is being used. They think that there's a XYZ coordinates of the satellite. I don't know what the like. I don't know where they're getting an XY out of without using the surface of Earth. Whether they want to believe it's a globe or whatever, but they're denying the surface of Earth completely when it comes to celestial navigation. And when it came to me showing this, it was just a total hand wave, complete hand wave. Except for there's one of them who talked with me briefly on QE Live one night, a man called Eric Erplinger, and he knows a bit about GPS, and he wasn't totally against what I was showing. He was open to a conversation about it, even. He's the only he asked me, he kind of asked me one kind of pertinent question. I can't remember what the question is now. I'm not just making that up. I can't. But he asked me some kind of a pertinent question. The only thing that they've said is, what about magnetic declination? Not understanding how the microsensor compass, how it works. It uses the magnetic field, so the declination is not going to matter. And as well as that, it's dealing with the receiver finding its location from a stationary position. So it's not finding its location as it's moving. It finds its location from a stationary position, and then it tracks its coordinates via where it's going. But this is all based around how a receiver would find its own coordinates on the Earth from a cold start. You turn it off in Holland, and a week later you turn it on in Texas. It doesn't know where it is. All it knows is it's been turned on and it's getting information in. And how would it find its location from there? And that's the direction I've taken it from. They don't really have any. As I said, it's only magnetic declination. Some of them have tried to use. But the problem with that is the GPS receivers would have to have that overcome for their own globe claims. Because how is the GPS receiver going to know where the signal in the sky is coming from if it can't use an azimuth? How is it going to know where that signal is coming from? If a receiver is receiving 4 random signals from 4 random points in the sky, and it doesn't use angles to these points, and it doesn't use the azimuth of these points, then how can it find its own location on the surface of Earth, even if it was a globe? It can't. It can't be known. It's an impossibility. They think just the receiver gaining a distance to 4 random points in the sky is all the receiver needs, and it doesn't need anything after that to know where it is. Well, that means nothing, because those 4 points in the sky, even if we're talking about satellites around the globe, those 4 points in the sky are 4 random points in the sky. The receiver doesn't know the azimuth of them, doesn't know anything, doesn't know any coordinates below them on the surface of their globe. They just think, the receiver basically what they think is magic happens. That's the only way to describe it. That's the only way to describe it. They think magic is happening. So to answer the question, they haven't really given me any actual real pertinent questions. No, I'll be honest.
Right, quick shout out to Ted, who says telling Neil shush is funny. Thank you for the super chat. Saying shush to Neil is funny, he says. I don't really follow, but thank you for the super chat anyway. Yeah, good stuff. You said already that you were pretty much done and you've added a bit extra.
Well, let me just go through the final points here, right?
Okay.
Because actually, the truth is, I actually forget sometimes. When I first formulated this, I forget sometimes that little things connected to it, right? Just to give a little bit more information on it, right? So, ignore the orange lines for a moment. Those four serrated orange lines, right? If we just work off of these signal sources, right? Now I have 5 signal sources, but only 4 serrated orange lines, but don't worry about that. If it finds out, if the receiver can get a signal source and a coordinate of this one, and then another one of this one, and it knows the angle between those 2 points, and it can then connect up with a third line like this, creating an angle, then that means if this line, this distance between signal source 1 and 2, let's say that's 500 miles, then using trigonometry, you could figure out what, using trigonometry, you can then figure out what the length of these 2 are. And it can then do the same thing with the ghost points here and here. And that gives us, and the more signals it uses, the more accuracy it gets. So it might find out it's within, let's say, 50 miles of a point. And the more signals it gets, and the more triangles it makes, or more, you could even use circles. Let's just say if I just get a circle, you can even say intersecting circles. Right, there's 1, there's 2. You could start using that, but it still would have to use trigonometry, I reckon. But the point is that once it starts that process, starts, it instantly starts knowing where it is. I would say within 50 miles. And then the more signals it gets and the more triangles it makes, and then it can start using circles, intersecting points. And especially if it's using the celestial ephemeris, because if you take it like this, if signal 2 is from an airplane and it gets the coordinates, it can then go, right, it uses a GP point, signal source 3 as a GP point of a celestial body, right? And it uses a signal from a boat here in signal source 4. And it can start connecting up these, and that's start giving us lengths of the triangles to its own position. And it's just trigonometry, two-dimensional trigonometry and intersecting circles. And that's what it is, using azimuth. Mainly, it can use angles, but I don't think it needs angles. What I mean is that it needs to use angles to know what not to use, which is below 10 degrees, but it doesn't need to use a triangle to the airplane. It can use that too, though. Let's just say this airplane is 35,000 feet and it has an angle of 27 degrees to it or something like that. It can then use that angle because it knows directly below that at the airplane sub point. It then knows, I'll just show, if you just give me a second. If it goes, let's just say this is the receiver, and this is the sub point of the plane. This is the plane, and this is the angle it has to it. It knows the azimuth, right, the point for this point of L, right? And it also has an angle to this plane. It can then also use the fact that it has this angle. It has this angle because it knows that's going to be 90 degrees. And then it has a height to the plane, so it knows that's 39,000 feet, and that's 27 degrees of an angle. It has this angle, 27 and 90. It can figure out the last angle and the length of these two sides. So if you think about the amount of calculations that a GPS receiver can do in the space of 2 minutes, because from a cold start, it takes from 30 seconds to 2 minutes for a receiver to find its location. So within 2 minutes, it could easily work out all those triangles. I mean, a mathematician within 2 minutes could work out those. Adam could work out those triangles within 2 minutes and figure out. So why would a receiver not be able to do it? Why would they be using any other system? It makes no sense to me. So that's my claim, that they're using azimuth, and they can use this where they're using elevations as well. They can use that if they feel, I would say they use everything, right? But mainly it's azimuth, and they're using triangles and intersecting circles. They're using airplanes, ships, high-altitude balloons, the celestial ephemeris, ground stations. I would say it wouldn't be beyond them to use someone's mobile phone. You know what I mean? Like, use every piece of info. All it needs is information. We're told that it needs we're told it needs certain signals and it needs this and that. It just needs information. It needs the coordinates and a time and an azimuth. That's really all it needs. And it finds its location. And if they're not using this system, they should be. It's that simple. Because this is a much better system. Anyway, that's the end of that. I won't take up any more time on the show.
Very good. Anybody got any comments on it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The same way he was able to draw and simplify this thing on the graph there. That same graph is a coordinate system in order for you to do this maths on the paper. Same thing. Over the land, you have a coordinate system that all of these GPS systems are going to pinpoint a position on the ground. So the grid system is the most important thing here. It's a horizontal plane of reference with zero elevation.
Exactly, George. This here is actually an XY grid. That's actually what it is. Because I can change the type of grid to a different type of grid. I can use a polar grid, which would be like a latitude and longitude, right? Or I can use a different other show grid. I can use isometric, right? An isometric grid, which is triangles. Right. But the XY grid is the one that you're going to be used. And each one of these little, if I zoom in, each one of these squares will become 4 other squares. And 4 of these squares become a square. And all of these edges and sides and corners all must meet exactly two-dimensionally for this system to work. And that's why I think the ballers don't want to deal with subpoints, because it means they have to admit that they're using a flat plane when they deal with subpoints. Because it can't work, or an XY grid can't work on the surface of a globe. It just can't.
And
You
it
know,
cannot
won't
work on the center of a sphere either, because it deals with elevation from the surface.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can use a flat plane at the center of a globe, Earth, but it won't be big enough. You'll have to use it at vernal equinox and extend that flat plane out into the celestial plane. You know, you have to go down into craziness. You have to go into craziness to try and hide the fact that you're just using a flat plane. That's what they're doing, basically. I'm not saying they're using the equatorial plane at equinox. I'm just saying if they want to use it, they have to actually make it bigger, because it's not big enough. Their equatorial plane.
So wait a second, Brian. So what you're saying is, all these years of hearing Earth's so biggie, but it's not big enough to go to the center of the Earth. You would have to extend it.
No, the equatorial plane isn't big enough. When you're deriving a minimum elevation angle and calling that the equator, and then slicing off the top of the hemisphere you call a sphere, you're just left with a little circle, an area of equal elevation, minimum elevation to Polaris. But that's not what they're using. They need an extended plane. So they're going to take it, as Brian describes, at the vernal equinox, and then just extend what was the value that's used to give you a circle of equal elevation for Polaris's minimum, and extend that plane out at infinitum. It's expansive. In other words, it doesn't stop at the radial value, because that's where you get your minimum to Polaris. It's an infinitely expanding plane for the purposes of this Cartesian system that it's going to be representing. It's just an extended plane. Now, that's not to say that we have got an extended flat Earth that goes on forever. It's just saying in this way of describing it on a coordinate system, it's an extended plane, because the R value doesn't give you a big enough plane. Obviously, it's just one area, and there's more than that, isn't there?
Well, if you look at this triangle here, right, this elevation angle here, this point here, the M, I'll make it a bit bigger, this is actually the surface of their globe, because that's what they're doing. They're creating an angle from their equatorial plane out through the surface of the globe, and then they're continuing it on to, they're claiming to continue it on to a satellite or whatever nonsense, right? But really, this point here, that is what the satellite is, if you understand what I mean. What I mean is that if this is, sorry, I keep doing that. If that point here, this blue M, if that, they want you to believe that this is what you're referencing, something out orbiting a globe. Well, what's actually been referenced is this. This could be a high altitude balloon, right, giving a microwave signal to a receiver as well as all this, because I'm not denying that they could be using the two-way speed light calculation, because they use it in laser range finding, right? That can be a high altitude balloon, has an angle to it, it gains a distance along this red line. It won't be exactly perfect, but it will be somewhat approximate based off of that calculation. It has two angles. It will also be given the altitude of the balloon from the balloon. Then it has two side lengths, right? Two angles. All it needs is the total length here, and it has a distance to that point once it has the azimuth to this point here. So I just can't see. Like, I looked into GPS and how they claimed it worked. And it did me best on a globe to make it work. The best I can do on a globe to make it work is to start with a flat Earth and then extrapolate out the globe after that. That's the only way you can do it. And that seems to be a lot of hassle for nothing. When you don't need all that, you just use the XY flat plane that you're using, that you're standing on. You don't need all that nonsense. This is far more simplistic, and you're using everything. You're not limited to just.
This is a familiar tale. So a bit like when 10th Man gets to page 87 in the Celestial Navigation books, and he's described measuring elevation angles, getting, it's not subpoints in that instance, it's ground positions, but same difference, the point on the ground below whatever it is you're claiming, because you need the coordinate on the ground to make your calculations on there, because that's where you're navigating. But in that respect, with celestial navigation, you get to about page 87 when they've described everything really clear and concise, and you've understood that you're extrapolating out from your measurements of a flat plane to circles that you can have intersecting. Great. Then they say you can also transpose this onto a spherical surface from hell, with the angles running parallel from a plane and your sensible horizon into hell when you do the transposition. And then you can put those points that are, with respect to the angles, plotted out onto the sphere surface. You're like, why am I doing this again? This isn't helping. This isn't even needed. You don't have to do any of this. It's just a way of incorporating a globe belief into a flat Earth measurement. And this is the same for Brian with subpoints.
Exactly the same thing. They're overcomplicating it for absolutely no reason. No reason whatsoever. Why would you do that? Even if you're... This is the thing. If this is a satellite here, let's say, right? I extend it out a little bit to there, right? And this is a receiver here on the surface of the globe, right? Then it's going to get within their paradigm this distance off the satellite, right? But how, this is the subpoint, the coordinates on the ground. How does the coordinates that you can't have, because there's no such thing as a sky coordinates, coordinates on the surface of Earth, there's no sky coordinates that don't adhere to the surface. They think that this one here, sorry, let's get rid of that. They think that this 0 here, that the distance between that and this is all 4 times, is all that the receiver needs. It's like, that doesn't, and it doesn't need this point here. It's like, none of that, this is impossible. Even on a globe, what they're claiming is completely impossible. And as I said, on a globe, the only way to make this work is to start with this flat plane at the center, treat the angle to the point here as if it's just intersecting the surface of your globe, and then work out after that, right, via this length and this constant here, because this red line will be a constant because it'll be the radius, and this line here will be a constant because it'll be a constant distance between the surface of the globe and the satellite. So then it has 2 constants to work with, and it has a length of this. You can work it out, but you can't do any of it without this angle from the center. None of that is happening without an angle off this flat plane. Why do any of that when you can just do this? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know what magic the answers the ballers are expecting, but I've heard nothing from them whatsoever in any way that's a rebuttal. They just think magic happens. There's no other way, without even trying to attack them, there's no other way to describe it. They think magic is happening, and when magic happens, if the receiver finds its location. That's literally it. There's no other way to describe it other than magic. That's literally that they have to believe magic is happening for the receiver to do what they think it does. I don't know.
What don't you know?
I don't know. I don't know what to say about them. Like they're kind of. I'm scratching my head like as to why they won't just accept that what they're claiming, what's the official stance on and what they're claiming, it's just not workable. It's like someone telling you an engine works like this. How your car drives is this, and you go through. You take in everything they're telling you about how the car engine works. Then you go and look into it, and it's just impossible for it to work that way. And you have to figure out how it actually works. And then you point out that, no, the engine works like this. Well, how they say it works can't work because of this, and this. And everyone tells you, go away, you don't know anything. Put their fingers in their ears. I don't know why people don't want truth and information. I don't know. Even if I was wrong about this, right? See this here. Even if I was wrong about this, which I'm not, right? As in, this is totally workable. The point is, even if I was wrong, that still won't make what they think is happening within their paradigm with their globe and GPS. That still won't make that work on their globe. Even if we were on a globe, how they say GPS works officially, it couldn't work. Just can't be done. You can't. The receiver will not find its location. It's not possible. I don't know. I don't know how to. I don't know what way to categorize this. You know what I mean? Like when you show people that something is impossible, and they just won't accept it.
Well, you were quite cool up until this point. You're getting a bit exasperated because you're trying to divine the lack of inspiration for truth from our opponents when you put this to them, and in many instances, it's not just a lack of inspiration for truth. It's a downright, condemning of what they require to have their belief in this particular example. And that can kind of be confusing to you, but don't overthink it is my advice, because we deal with a lot of crazy nutty people with a nutty belief that we used to also
Yeah,
be part
but it
of.
is befuddling.
It's like
I
trying to
understand
assess.
where Brian's coming from.
Yeah, but it's like trying to assess what a Scientologist is feeling and thinking and their motivation behind nonsense when you're on the outside now. It's hard to do. You can't really. You just have to show them what's what, and you can't do anything else other than that. You can't explain why they deal with what you put to them the way they deal with it. You're never going to get anywhere in that regard. But up until this point, it's been really good. You know what I mean? Thank you, by the way, Brian. It's been really good couple of days in this regard. I certainly feel a bit more enlightened.
Yeah, you're right, though, Nathan, because I've even found that recently in my videos that I've started calling them idiots and bozos and boneheads, because it's like the frustration that needs to come out of me. You know what I mean? And it's to the point where they're actually even joking with me about it. They're even making jokes with me about it, because I've been doing it so much lately. Because I just can't fathom how a whole group of people cannot just understand basic logic. Because I'm coming at it from a point of view of what's true, whereas they're coming back at it from a point of view of it's purely of a belief that gets right the way of what's true, and that's what they believe, and they believe that what they believe is the truth. And
you hit it right in the head. There it is, Brian. Belief. That's the key word. They have a belief system, and you're tearing it apart, and it hurts them.
Yeah, it's stupid, because you end up actually sometimes, because they're so nasty about it, I can find myself actually enjoying their frustration. But then I tell myself, no, I don't need to be that way. Do you know what I mean? Not that I want to be soft with them, because that's no good, but I don't need to be nasty with them. But sometimes they push it to the point where that's all they deserve. You know what I mean? They literally push it to the point. They throw it so much, and they hand wave things away so much, and they don't give any coherent responses to anything. Just, you're wrong and you're stupid. You need to go to school. Was it one of the things? What was it? Blue Marble Science started one of his many comments on one of my more recent videos. I think it was the one I just did the other day. Was, you need to find some kid in your neighborhood who blah blah blah. I didn't read on. Some young kid in your neighborhood. So in other words, I'm a dummy who needs to go out and find me some young kid in my neighborhood who's going to explain to me what I don't understand about how he thinks GPS works. You know what I mean?
Brian, you're talking about a guy who demonstrated gas pressure without a container with 3 or 4 containers.
I know.
Really?
This is the thing, though. But it's like, that's just one example. I get so many comments that are just hand waves of truth, and you kind of go, "What the hell am I doing?" It's like it ends up being frustrating, because you can't verbalize without using the words bozo and bonehead and all that. You can't verbalize what's going on in your head as to why these people aren't getting this. They don't want to get it. They don't want to get it. They don't want to have to get that. They don't want to have to deal with what that is. They don't want. Most of them do not want that, and that's why they're here.
Conspiracy cats.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of sleepless nights they're having, but they must be having a lot of them. They have to be. They have to be having a lot of sleepless nights. There's no way around it.
Yeah, but that's not your problem, and I've felt more and more like that as time's progressed, which is to say, that's your problem. Asking me how this now works isn't my problem anymore. We've laid down what's what. You now want to tell me I'm an idiot and need to go to school. That's not a rebuttal. Either your incomprehension of it or your inability to accept it isn't my problem. And trying to explain why they would be like that, again, isn't really our concern. And in this entire discussion, I hope the audience agree with me. We've got over 100 people watching, right? Up until this point, Brian's been cool, calm and collected. And then I can just sense, not much, an air of frustration coming in. And what's he talking about while that frustration sneaks in? The inability of other people to comprehend. It's like, this should be the last thing that frustrates us, should it not? It is. I'm not saying I'm innocent. I get more frustrated than anyone, Brian. I can empathise, right? I'm not saying I'm some saint.
I know you can. I know you can.
Yeah, but the other day, Nathan, you were breaking down something, and the guy said word salad means nothing. It's word salad to him because he ain't comprehending it. But it was perfect English to me. I understood exactly what you were talking about. So they don't want to understand it. Brian's correct on that. Because they got a religious system that they're holding to.
Quite a useful connection, because that particular example was somebody listening to me explain, without using the overriding term of what is being done, a description of measuring elevation angle measurements to Polaris and how they're performed. Now, at the end of that description, he says it's word salad. And I'm like, actually, it's the measurement of latitude. There's no arguing about it. But in his mind, because he doesn't understand it, it's word salad. Now, that can be frustrating. Now, in that particular debate, we were very much on the front foot for the entire show, so, you know, nothing was going to particularly sway me. But if you're dealing with someone that's a lot more frustrating, that sort of hand wave can get the better of some people.
Yeah. What I now find, though, I have to say, is I've noticed small little pockets recently, in the past couple of months, of the ballers here and there actually starting to agree on something with me, with small little things. For instance, I was asked on one of my recent GPS videos, someone put in the usual nonsense. This is on every video I have there. It's like, where's your flat out map for all the GPS positions, right? This rubbish. And I said, where's your correct globe map? Oxymoron. I put it in parentheses, oxymoron. Right? So you can't have a globe map, right? And one of the ballers came in and joked with me. He's like, yeah, I said something else. I wrote something else about mapping or something like that. And one of them came in and joked about me. Yeah, there's no real correct world map. There's no proper map. And I said, yeah, there is no such thing as a correct world map. No, one is not in existence. We have maps, but none of them are correct. And he just agreed with me. You know what I mean? So there is some pockets there of people on the other side who are starting to understand, because there's even another thing I showed with what they call spherical triangles, how they're being formulated, and I showed how this one website was literally using actual triangles, but the numbers they were given for the angles all added up to just less than 180 degrees. And the reason they were doing it is so that when they place it onto a sphere, it will be closer to 180 degrees or somewhat match it or something like that. And it made no sense. I added up all the internal angles of these 4 or 5 triangles and showed how none of these internal angles altogether are all added up to 180 degrees. Yet they were actual straight line, real triangles. And one of the ballers came in and said, yeah, good catch. He said, that makes no sense. You know what I mean? So there is some...
yeah, you're right about that. It's nonsense, isn't it? What?
Yeah, one of them agreed. That's all nonsense. He said, good catch on that. He said, that's nonsense. You know, he understood, like, that can't be... You can't have a 3 straight lines meeting at 3 vertices and it not add to 180 degrees. That's total nonsense. He agrees.
Okay. Slightly bizarre. But what you're saying is there is some concessions in regards to where their failings lie, and they're happy to concede those. It doesn't change any, or maybe it does. Does it change anything in terms of your understanding of why they deny what you've put down, or B, that they're on some road to actually understanding the origins of their globe belief?
Well, you have to start thinking at this stage, if you're on the globe side, is it time to jump ship? Because I put it to Ruhif. I said, you need to get off the Titanic now. There's a ship right next to you that has a room, has food, has safety, has everything. And you're staying on the Titanic and it going down. Why are you not jumping onto this other ship? And he came back at me with some nonsense or whatever. And I started calling them, what did I start calling them? Iceberg Williamson or something I started calling them because of the Titanic, right? I was joking with him. But the thing is that there's surely globers out there who are going, this is a kind of a sinking ship. Do you know what I mean? It gets to the point where you're going to go, do you want to stay on that sinking ship until your head ends up underwater? Or do you want to jump ship before any of that happens?
These will be the I keep forgetting the word for it. The LARPers that in 2, 3, let's say it's 10, who cares, years' time, go, yeah, we knew all along. We were just trying to enhance the argument when we were playing devil's advocate. You're like, yeah, right.
Yeah, because that's what they're going to say. They're going to say, we were just enjoying it or whatever. They're going to say they kind of knew that it wasn't a globe. You know what I mean? They're going to say that, even though they still are hanging on for dear life. Now, there'll be certain members of them that won't be able to say that. Let's say Blue Marble Science, Wally, these kind of people. It's like, no, there's no way out of it for you. Like, you are too vocal and too stupid. You can't say that. You've shown your hand too much, so you can't say that. Point the flat out. He can't say he knew it was flat all along. Do you know what I mean? But some of the other people in the trolls and the faceless types, you know what I mean? They can say, "Oh yeah, we knew all along it was flat."
I don't know. I wouldn't put it past any of them actually. You say that.
Oh, I wouldn't put it past them to say it, but it's not going to go anywhere. Do you know what I mean? There's too much evidence that that's not what they were thinking.
Well, perhaps this is wishful thinking on our part, but I'm going to do my little call to action. Stay tuned if you're watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So, another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.